Hello, dear friends. Welcome to our workshop on the mother wound. Let me see. I'm still learning on all this tech stuff, so I had to agree that I was recording on my phone because I'm logged in from my phone so that you can see my hands, and I'm logged in on my computer on Zoom to record this. All very fancy. Deep breath. I have made it to this point. I have been wanting to start recording this. I'm going to just stitch as we chat. I think that'll help me calm down. I have been wanting to record this for a couple of weeks now. And I, oops, I only threaded one of my threads, so we're just going to go with it. And I have a little piece of fabric here, and as I introduce our workshop, I'm just going to do some straight stitches that I've been just a scrap. So I've been wanting to record this for a while, and today was a really good day for me to go ahead and get started. But of course, what did I do? I felt like I could not possibly start until I completely redid my room. It's so hot. It just got hot, and the my desk was covering the air conditioner, and so I needed to clear out the space where the air conditioner was, and that required just a pretty massive overhaul. So I could not figure it out. I finally figured out a way. I wanted to still be able to see out the window. I'm in my bedroom. That's where my office is. So it was a little bit of a juggling act, but I got it rearranged, did all of that, and then wanted to make sure I had all my notes ready for this first introduction to the workshop. And now here I finally am. And of course, in half an hour, I have to go pick up my kiddo. So isn't that just the way things are? But I think if I keep this just at half an hour, we'll be perfect. So let's take a deep breath together. And to start with, what you will need for this workshop is a needle, any size needle that works best for you, some thread. You can do either regular, that's a funny one, regular thin sewing thread or embroidery thread. And you can break up that embroidery thread into individual pieces and use however many you want. The more thread, the thicker your line will show up when you sew, and the less, the thinner. It does not matter. There's no pattern for this. If you were a part of the grief workshop, you know that I don't do any patterns. I just sew whatever feels right. It's like preschoolers making a collage. So you'll need your needle, some different kinds of thread, whatever colors feel fun to you, some scraps of fabric. Again, whatever you have, you do not need to go out and buy anything. If you have scraps, that's perfect. If you have a towel, an old rag, and some socks that you've haven't found the match to, and you want to use those, perfect. It does not need to look like anything. If you want to, at the end of this, display or give away what you've sewn, great. But I don't want you to feel any pressure to make it look nice, because it may bring up a lot of emotions, just like the grief one, and you may want to just toss it, or you may want to tuck it away and just sew on it whenever you're having big feelings again. So it's really not about creating a finished product. It's more about using the experience of stitching to be really in the present moment and work through some of these big feelings. So scraps of fabric, needle, thread, some scissors, and set yourself up a special space, put some soft music on in the background, get your coziest clothes on, maybe light a candle, get a cup of tea. I just have to share because it is so hot. I made myself a big iced tea, but I'm using an old pickle jar and I didn't want to be looking at the little pickle label. So I had this sweet handkerchief that I got from Swanson's Fabrics. Plug for Swanson's Fabrics. They have an online shop and they take all donations. So it's all stuff that would have gone in a dumpster and super cheap. So I just wrapped it around here with a rubber band. And doesn't it look so cute? So get yourself a drink, get yourself a candle, put on some pretty music, have a cozy space, get a blanket out if you want. Whatever will make you feel really just supported and loved. So slow stitching is, people have different definitions for it. But for me, slow stitching is about using the act, the repetitive motion of stitching in a really intentional way to explore whatever's going on for you in the present moment. So mindfulness means being in the present moment. And to explore creativity, to explore colors together, the textures of the fabrics, and following your instincts instead of following what you think you should be doing. So my hope is that whenever you're doing one of these workshops with me, is that you'd be really letting go of that should feeling or that following directions feeling that so many of us have. And really just let that, when you're 3 years old and you're just grabbing a color and swirling it all over the page because that's what feels good, and not because it matches or looks good or is following, what you're supposed to do. So our topic, I'm so excited about this, is the mother wound. And I was introduced to this by Lizzi Brewer, who has a YouTube channel. I so recommend you check her out. She was reading this book and she mentioned it in one of her videos. So it's by someone named Bethany Webster, and it's called Discovering the Inner Mother, a Guide to Healing the Mother Wound and Claiming Your Personal Power. Now, I ordered it from the library, but you can get it pretty much anywhere. And I haven't read it completely, but I've listened to a lot of her podcasts about it, which I highly recommend. If you listen to podcasts, just put it into your podcast search, Bethany Webster. And so I'm going to be reading the book along with doing this workshop. It actually just came in today. So I won't be, going through every minute detail of it, but the piece that I really want to reflect on is these 4 areas where we are affected by the mother wound. And so what is the mother wound? Let me switch to my fabric that I'm going to use for this, because this was just to get me sort of started and calmed down. Okay, so I have shared before, I use this little biscuit tin to keep my needle and thread and scissors, pin cushion and everything. I'm excited to share with you. I'll come back to what the mother wound is, but I'm really excited to share with you what I chose to use. Oops, I just crashed something underneath my desk. Hold on. Okay. So this worked out perfect because my mom had just sent me this big box. Okay, hold on. This big box of things that she had found in her sewing room. First of all, look at this little doll that my grandma made me. She's a day and night, flip it around. Isn't that so sweet? So she's going to sit with me while I work on this. And then I'm going to use some of these things that my mom sent. So this actually my mom didn't send, but this is some gorgeous lace that I got from my dressmaker friend. These are some old-fashioned aprons that my great grandma made. Now, one of the pieces that we'll talk about in the mother wound is scarcity. And I was like, I should save them perfectly intact and not touch them because that, it would be bad to cut them up. But I'm going to sort of try to break myself out of that. I'm going to cut some of these up because I'm not going to wear this kind of an apron. And sitting in a closet is not doing my grandma any good. And if I can use some of it and then have something that I would look at or hang up, then I think she would rather that. Okay. And then this is what I'm going to use as my base. And now you can do this any way you want. There are going to be 4 parts that we're going to go through. And so what I'm going to do, like I kind of did with the grief, is I'm going to section this into 4 parts. I'm going to make a little heart in each one of these 4 sections because everything my grandma did had hearts. And my grandma made me this. So I'm going to section into 4 sections on this one piece of fabric, but you don't have to do that. You can get just one little scrap of fabric. This is just random. I got it from Swanson's again. You could just get one piece of fabric, and this could be the part 1, the personal mother wound, and you could just stitch straight stitches all the way around it and whatever you want. I'm gonna scrap together a bunch of these fun fabrics that I again just got from Swanson's, patch them together into a little heart in 4 hearts to finish this. But you do not need to do that. You can do literally whatever you want. If you want to just get one of your mismatched socks and sew on it while you're thinking about each one, that's perfect. You do not need to do anything fancy. Okay, so let me get my first little heart cut out. Let's see how I should set this up. I think I'm going to start with blue thread. I think I'm going to use primarily blue and green on this because I really like those colors. I'm going to get myself out a piece of embroidery thread. Now embroidery thread, just go ahead and switch because you don't need to be seeing me anymore. See how we're doing on time. Yeah, we're okay. So embroidery thread comes with, I always forget exactly how many, but I think it's my little needle. I think it's 6 pieces of thread. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm gonna split this in half because I really like it when the thread shows up. So I'm gonna do, yep, 3 pieces. Embroidery thread is hard to separate to me, but if someone has a better way to do it, please let me know. But I usually just pull it down and it gets all in a big, great knot. Okay. So there's that. So I'm gonna put this to the side. I have my needle. Go ahead and thread it. Okay. And if you want to pause this and go get your stuff, just go get a stack of fabrics that you like. And wasn't I going to do 2? No, maybe I'll do 3. I like it to be kind of bold. Okay. Now, the first ornament, so I'm going to get, not pretty with those little circles there. I'll get just a little square of that. And you can make a pattern, you can make a design and then pin it down and work on it that way, or you can add just one little piece at a time and not pay attention to what you're doing. It's really up to you. You can just let it flow, or you can do something that feels more like you're being real intentional about it. I get some of this edge here. And let me get one of these guys. Not so gorgeous. Can you even imagine making this? And just eyeballing it. What looks fun? What colors do you like together? So I'm going to pile these together into a heart shape, loose heart shape. And I think I'll do a little like ruffle around it or something. Ooh, look at that fabric. That's spectacular. I love batiks. Maybe I want to use all that edge around here. Let's just see. I'm just going to throw it on. I think that's enough for now. Like this bright pink. Okay. So I've got these piled up. And they're sort of loosely in the shape of a heart. Can you see that? Okay, now let me uncover my notes here. And I don't know if I'm going to want that on top. I'm going to use a few pins just to put this down. So I'm not going to try to finish the edges or, make it too perfect. Let's make that into a little heart. Aw, can you see it? I love it. Okay. So what is the mother wound? The mother wound is something that it seems that Bethany Webster came up with, from what I can tell. And her website says it is based on a concept that healing through the lens of the mother wound will allow us to both have better lives ourselves, but also really help us heal the things that are so heartbreaking and troubled in the world. So the mother wound is something we inherit as people. So she says it's something we inherit as women. Now, as some of you may know from getting to know me, I identify as transgender non-binary, which means I don't really feel like a man or a woman, and I don't really think those divisions are helpful for us. The rules. I don't love the rules. So I just really feel like it would be lovely if we could all just let ourselves be people. And so I'm changing the wording here from it's something we inherit as women to it's in something we inherit as people who are assigned female at birth, or there's a term called femmes. So that could be anyone who's born, either assigned female or assigned male at birth, but who feels like they connect with feminine things and then experiences pain from that. So many people who are assigned male at birth and then are quote unquote too feminine are dealt with really harshly, right? Or, when people we think are little boys, and we say, don't be tough, don't like pink, don't enjoy playing as a princess, and we put that wounding onto them too. So I think it's all people who are assigned female at birth and socialized as women, and also femmes, people of any gender identity who have that natural feminine part of them and who are told there's something wrong with them because of it. And so anybody who is assigned female at birth or is a femme and is living within a patriarchy, which is, what our cultural system is based off of right now, pretty much everywhere in the world. Anyone who's living in the patriarchy is going to experience this wounding because the patriarchy is based off of the concept that women are less than, or the feminine is something that's less than. And so there's a wounding that takes place there. Excuse me. And out of that experience of coming into a world that thinks that you're less than, we end up having shame-based behaviors. And these shame-based behaviors are often what makes our lives so painful. So I'm going to go through as we stitch, and I invite you just to be stitching along however you want and taking breaks whenever you want, pause whenever you need to. And again, no pattern needed, just any straight stitching, or, if fancy embroidery stitches, go ahead. But any straight stitching you want to do, any stitching, and I'll just chit chat. So I'm going to go through some of these behaviors that come up into our lives when we are born with this experience of realizing that who we are is considered less than, and that, and as a result, start to feel ashamed of who we are. So one of the behaviors that comes up is overachievement. So let's just sit for a moment. And I've said all of this about, what growing up as a femme means in a patriarchal society. Just take a couple of deep breaths as we stitch for a moment and think about what ways does this resonate for you? What does it bring up initially in your feelings? And, overachievement is something that so many of us deal with, and interlaced with that is the perfectionism. And so also I want you to think about, as we take a quiet moment, how has my invitation to do something without a pattern, how has that triggered your possibly fears about not knowing how to do it right if we don't have a pattern or a set of directions? Let's take a few moments and just stitch and think about how growing up and understanding that we're less than has driven us to overachievement and perfectionism. based on this shame that we're less than because of how we were born. If you notice that you're holding your breath, go ahead and loosen your jaw a little bit. Give your neck a little stretch. Notice if you're holding your body tightly, thinking about these things. Notice where your shoulders are. And remember that there's really no finish line in slow stitching. So if you notice yourself hurrying, consider the invitation to slow down, that there's no finish, and so there's no need to finish here. And that just like when you go on vacation and sit at the pool, you're not trying to get it done, you're trying to enjoy. Bring that energy to this. Not trying to get it this done. I'm just trying to see what I can feel and if I can enjoy it in whatever way feels right to me. You know, perfectionism has been something that has been a huge struggle in my life. And even though I've done a lot of work around releasing the idea that anything gets better by me trying to be perfect, I still have that critic in my mind, that inner critic. Even here where there was a spot where 4 seams met underneath and I couldn't get my needle through and I needed to do one bigger stitch there, I had that voice of criticism within myself saying, oh, that stitch is too big, it's going to look funny. I'm just going to notice that that came up and say, that makes sense, given the system that I've been raised in. And I'm sorry that I have that fear or pressure. And how can I be gentle to myself and say, hey, this is a new system that we're building, and I'm giving you a new chance to try to see that it's safe. It's safe to do things that aren't perfect. All right. Oh, the next one. This one has been one of the biggest things in my life. People pleasing. How many of you have been people pleasers? Oh, Lord. This one is so big. People pleasing, if you think about it, just shows you so based in fear. Why do we need to please other people? Because we think something bad's going to happen to us, right? People pleasing. And how do we keep ourselves stuck with constant people pleasing. And another layer of that one, how is people pleasing dishonest? You know, how are we making it harder to have real intimacy in relationships when we're people pleasing, because the people that we're trying to please are not going to know the real us, right? If we're not being honest. All right, let's take a couple deep breaths. Keep moving your neck and your shoulders around. Open up your jaw. See if we can get those ears to pop a little bit. Notice how much tension you're holding and where you're holding it. And what thoughts come up with people pleasing. Notice if you're holding your breath. See if there's anything you can do with your body to make you feel a little bit more comfortable. The question that we don't ask when we're people pleasing is, how do I feel? Right? So redirecting ourselves to these little moments of asking, how do I feel? Are my shoulders tight? Do I want to shift in my seat? Do I want to take a drink of water? Is this feeling like I've done enough for today and I want to pause it? You know, asking yourself how you're feeling and then responding to it in the same way that when you have one of your little kids and you say, oh, do you need a snack? Do you need a nap? Do you need a coat? Do you need a hug? Starting to be as attentive as we are to the people that we've traditionally tried to please. We obviously have that skill of knowing how to check in on someone and see how they're doing and take care of them, so we can transfer that skill to ourselves. Because when we're asking, how are you? And trying to adjust based on how the other person is, that takes us away from sometimes. I mean, I think we can do both. But when we're stuck in people pleasing, it's only that one direction. It's only how is the other person and how can I adjust my behavior to help them feel better, happier, more comfortable. And so this is the opportunity to look at that and start to do those little tiny things to shift and communicate to your own self that you're starting to pay attention to you. Do you want to switch thread? Do you want to put a little music on in the background? Do you want to just mute me talking and just sew by yourself for a little while? And realizing that there's no one in charge right now of you. You're in charge. And you're not trying to be a good flow stitcher. You're just relaxing into what your body is telling you. All right, tie this thread off. Next one, passive aggressive. Oh, isn't it so fun to flip it over and see what's on the other side? That is just my favorite part of all this. Isn't that a sweet, soft yellow fabric? Passive aggressive. Oh my gosh, friends. Before until I was 35, I thought passive aggressive and aggressive were the only two forms of being in the world. I don't think I definitely had never been assertive, and I had never witnessed anyone being assertive. So I just was shocked when I found out about this thing called assertive. I think I heard about it through my DBT class, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. They teach about being assertive, but it was hard for me to understand. It just sounded wonky, and I was like, what? What is that? But then I'll show you this book. I read this book, which just blew my mind. Let's see. How to Be an Adult by David Richo, a handbook on psychological and spiritual integration. It's a tiny little book. I have to tell you, just shockingly profound. It is a lot about being assertive. And when I first was exposed to being assertive, it sounded so rude to me. I thought, no way could I ever be like that. It sounded like harsh when the way it was described. And saying no, forget it. So this passive aggressive is something that so many people do. I think we have no idea how pervasive it is. I'll tell you the best example of it is when my kid and the little neighbor kids, they come over and they say, "Oh, it's so hot. Popsicles would be so nice." And I'm always like, "Are you trying to ask for a popsicle?" You can say, "May I have a popsicle?" But they are so incapable of being direct. And it is because this world has trained them. Or they'll come, I have a little candy bowl by the door, and they'll come and they'll stand by the candy and they'll say, "Oh, the candy looks really good." I'm always like, "Would you like to ask for a piece of candy?" But this passive aggressive is just wild how pervasive it is. And if you start to look at it, I think you will be blown away at how many of your interactions are just passive aggressive, like never saying clearly the thing. So, like, maybe I'm trying to get my kid to brush his teeth at bedtime, and I say, "Come on, I'm so tired." Okay, well, that's not his business how tired I am. But if I say, "It's time to brush our teeth," right? That's clear. And I'm not trying to guilt him by saying, "I'm tired, so you should brush your teeth," right? And what we don't realize is this: when we're not assertive, we are trying to like put shame or guilt onto someone else so that they'll do something, and it becomes a like way that we don't know how to just ask for what we want, because it is scary and we were taught that wasn't safe, right? But then it turns into us as adults putting these weird like guilt obligation things on other people. So that's a big one. Okay, the next one I'm going to speed up a little bit because I got to go get my kid. The next one is ashamed to have needs. This one's huge. I have been so ashamed my whole life to have any needs because it means I did something wrong, right? If I needed anything. But of course we have needs. So, yeah, I actually have a little note on the fridge that says, "Do worse, need more," to try to combat this training I've received. Feeling that something is wrong with me. Oh, how many times have I said, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Just because someone else was uncomfortable around me. But their discomfort does not mean there's something wrong with me, right? Um, Taking the worst or going without. Oh my gosh, how many models have we had of women saying, I'll take the broken piece of pie, right? I don't need any. You take the last one. And that leads into the martyrdom, the constant, it's like, oh, I'm holy because I'm going without. I'm holy because I'm suffering, right? It's like the brave or the more admirable thing if someone asks you how are you doing is to say, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, life is so busy and hard, right? We don't praise or respect people who say, oh, my life is really easy, it's going great. Right? So wild. And this is all based on that patriarchal women are less than. And so we are always trying to prove that as true with all these shame-based behaviors. So the Bethany Webster breaks up the experience of the mother wound into 4 categories. Okay. And that's what we're going to spend the next 4 sections of this on. So the first one is sort of what we've been talking about, the personal. So this is how this gets brought up in our primary caregiver relationship. Whether you have a mother as your primary caregiver, a grandparent, if you were in the foster system or adopted, or even in a group home type living situation, you had probably a primary caregiver who was giving you this information and communicating to you that there was something wrong with you, or there was scarcity, not enough, or that it was a burden to have you. I know I fall into this when when my kid is wanting something at the store and I say, oh, I'm working so hard and I don't have all the money and you're making me feel bad by asking for it, right? All that stuff. So that's the personal area. The next one is cultural. So this is how we interact with women and people who are assigned female at birth and any trans feminine people. And so that's cultural. And it's again that based on scarcity and the patriarchal concept that feminine is less than, right? And then there's the spiritual. And the spiritual is when we're little, really infancy, we depend on that primary caregiver, that mother figure, as our higher power, right? We don't survive at all without them. And their approval and their care is absolutely necessary to our survival. And so how this interacts with patriarchy is that we also end up feeling like we are not worthy to have a direct contact with God, because so many of us are raised in these patriarchal religions where we need a husband as a intermediary, or a priest or a pastor or a rabbi as an intermediary between us and God. And so that can make it really pretty impossible for us to consider that there's any divinity within us, and to understand that everything is divine and that there is a true oneness of divinity with all beings, people and animals and trees and plants. And that leads us to the 4th section, which is the planetary. So the relationship with the earth as our mother, right? And so all of these contribute to our world having real challenges because we're not understanding that oneness and that divinity and that total value, and that there's no one who's less than anyone else. So these are not like in any order. They all affect us, all these 4 parts: the personal, cultural, spiritual, and planetary. You don't have to go in any order through the next couple videos. So feel free to hop around. You're not gonna like miss anything if you don't listen to a certain video. If you, again, like I said before, if you want to put me on mute and just stitch, you're welcome to do that. Because there's no pattern, because we're not trying to finish anything in any certain way, you don't need to watch everything in any sort of order. So to give you a little hope before we wrap up this video, why are we going through thinking about these painful things? Why are we taking the time? Because part of the healing is, Bethany Webster calls it, validate and differentiate. So part of the healing comes when you have a little kid who says, I fell down, and you can see it, and it's like a really minor scrape, and you're like, you're fine. They are not fine until you get out a Band-Aid and you kiss it and you say, oh, look at it. It looks like it hurts. How do you feel? Do you want a Band-Aid? Do you need a kiss or a hug? Right? And we are just like those little kids. We really need someone to validate what's going on. We need someone to say, oh, wow, it looks like it's been really hard to grow up in this patriarchal system and to feel like you're less than. And how has that been for you? And how has it affected your life? And how are you feeling about it now? And what parts of your life have been harder because of it? And wow, did you blame yourself for these behaviors? Because now we can see that it wasn't just you. It was that you're a whole part of this whole system, and that this was generationally passed down to you. So that's that validate part. And the differentiate is for us to say, I am no longer just the little kid feeling overwhelmed and needing a mom or a husband or a partner or a job or a kid even to save me. I am going to be that mother to myself. I'm going to be that maternal voice to myself, and I'm going to give myself the validation and then the support. And that's the differentiate part, to say, I'm going to be the adult now to your little inner child who is so sad about this and still waiting for that hug and that Band-Aid, and say, I'm going to be this loving, mothering, maternal energy for you. And I'm going to listen to you. And then I'm going to tell you that this is something I can help you with, and I will support you. I will help you get what you need now because I'm an adult, and I will listen to you when you're upset. And that, releases that codependency, that waiting for someone else to save us, or not being okay unless someone else says it's okay to be okay, or unless somebody else is feeling okay. And not only will this help us to feel better inside our own selves and our individual lives, but it will allow us to come to the needs of the world in a way that we're not trying to save or fix or project onto the world our pain, right? So we can actually be far more effective in creating better systems that are more supportive of everyone, when we've done our own healing. So this is not just about sitting inside our houses and feeling happy. It's about allowing ourselves to heal into more wholeness so that we can come to the world with less codependency, less victim mindset, and more clarity. So we're not coming to the world in pain and sort of projecting all our own pain onto the world. And this is her premise, is that this will lead to a more, just and healthy world. And I agree with her that really we can't do, this social justice type work. Just ends up being pretty violent if we haven't healed our own trauma around these things. So that was a lot, my friends. Let's take a deep breath. I'm gonna switch back. I'm gonna stretch my shoulders a little bit. Let's see. If you want to stretch your arms up, this is big work that we're doing. Don't underestimate giving yourself the time to think about these things. And the repetitive motion of the sewing is actually connecting in with the right side of your brain so that this pain can be integrated in a way where it's less, it's going to be experienced less traumatically in your body. So you're really doing something for yourself and for your families and for the entire world, because when we have more peace in our hearts, we can show up with more peace in the world, and we can make better decisions and help people more because we're not in a reactive, freaked out, traumatized state. So thank you for your contribution. I totally failed to say that I am not a mental health professional. So please remember to take really good care of yourself throughout this process, to seek professional help when you're needing it, to definitely take, time with friends or journaling, prayer, meditation, whatever is best for you to really support yourself, because this can bring up some difficult things, and stop if it's too hard or too much. Just take such good care of yourself. Know that I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to sew again with you soon.